Welcome back, everybody. Let's talk external regulators. We're going to talk about what are they, what are the benefits for them for non-regulated guns, and actually regulated, and some of the other benefits. So anyway, external regulator. Obviously, it kind of does what it sounds like. It regulates the air going into the entire gun versus a regulated air gun that has kind of a built-in regulator, kind of limiting the amount of air that gets to the pellet. And so there's a little bit of difference there as far as how things work, but essentially this, you guys can take something like this and turn a non-regulated air gun kind of into a regulated air gun. And there's a lot of other benefits. But before we get into that, let me show you how you hook this up and some of the methods to the madness. Now, we got an external tank here. This is the thing, and the air, kind of the tank goes in here. And essentially what we do is open the tank all the way and the gauge would fill to 4,500 or 6,000 PSI. We can keep that set up the way we want and then take this and the outgoing air hose and plug it in. Let me see what we got here. And there we go. So one dial has the actual air pressure that's coming in, and then we regulate it. We can kind of turn it up and down to whatever we want to go into the rifle. So from a non-regulated perspective, we can dial it in at, say, 2,000 PSI. And so that allows us to really regulate all the air coming through the system and that. So some of the benefits is you're not losing a lot of air by kind of deconnecting your hoses. And so you get a higher shot count efficiency for your rifle in itself, because there's a lot of air that bleeds off as you have to kind of degas your hoses. The other thing, it's less stress on the gun. And this is whether it's a regulated gun, unregulated. You could literally, I think some guns go up to about 300 bar, maybe a little more. So you could have it go to, 200 bar, something along those lines. So there's less pressure in the tank. There's less pressure on all the parts because this is doing the work there. And it kind of allows that. So for an unregulated gun, for say this Talon P or a Condor, you're able to just kind of keep shooting. The benefit to a lot of these small tanks or the big bores, the fact that you only get like 10 or 12 shots. And it even goes for regulated guns. For instance, the Pantera that I shot just last week was 10 to maybe 20 shots per fill. I shot hundreds of rounds, and essentially it was just so repetitive. I just hooked up and tethered to it and just allowed it to shoot at like 250 bar, 225 bar, and then the regulator did the rest. But that's one of the benefits. You get continuous shooting. There's like no breaks. So many of the times, especially shooting a big bore, I'll have like a 78 cubic foot tank, slam in the hose, slam this together, and just shoot for like 2-3 hours and not have to worry about my air at all. And then just unplug it and go home. There's not this continuous process of breaking up and shooting in that. So it's great on the range. It's, as I mentioned, you get more shots consistency wise, because for a non-regulated gun, you have this bell-shaped curve. Well, you can kind of set it up to the max feet per second, or if your gun is running at, let's say, 2,200 PSI, and it seems to shoot the most accurate, but it's on the downhill slide of the curve, you can kind of just dial it in there. And so these gauges are much more accurate than the gauges on your rifle. Even the most expensive rifles, for some reason they put on like a $10 gauge or something. It's very cheap. This, you can get it right down, kind of dial it in. The wheel is super, super sensitive. You just kind of dial it up and you're good to go. So obviously the benefits of an internal regulator is the fact that it's smaller, it's inside your gun, it's portable. You don't have to reset it every time. So this, if you switch guns, you kind of got to reconfigure this piece. Now the benefit of this is the fact that you don't even have to degas going from the tank to the reg. You just have to kind of sample this piece off and then reset, recalibrate your setting, which is pretty nice. So the benefit is you can have like 6 guns that are non-regulated or regulated, and you just plug this in and go. One regulator to do it all. Benefit is if your regulator goes out in your rifle, you got to take it apart. This, you can just kind of unhook, send it to a shop and have it worked on. As I mentioned, the reduction in the wear and tear is the fact that the fine tuning, and I know this kind of is tough, but for instance, in a regulated gun like the Impact or the Maverick, sometimes you have to kind of degas the gun all the way or take the tank out and have to do a bunch of things if you want to lower your regulation pressure. So you kind of have to worry about that. In this instance, you can kind of just lower it down and automatically just brings everything down and there's no issue. It kind of just degasses on itself. And so you get kind of, you have a lot, it's a little bit faster to find out that exact feet per second that you want for accuracy, because you're not having to like mess with your internal regulators as much. And once you get that dialed in, you can scope it in, say from 2000 PSI all the way up to 3300 PSI, whatever works for condors, and that's usually 1900 PSI all the way up to about 2700 PSI. So you can just slowly kind of increase your feet per second or your PSI and take note of your groups and you're good to go. So guys, that is about it. I know these are $550. It's not a cheap device, but once you actually have one of these, you don't want to go back, especially if you have numerous air guns. I can give it definitely a thumbs up, or some similar device. There's a bunch of different ones. There's some inline ones, but this is kind of, I think this is called the gold star. I'm just going to call it the gold standard because every guy that knows shoots big bore or does a lot of shooting usually has one of these gold guys hooked up to their rifles, and it's just awesome. So comments, questions below, hit that subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you next week.